Welcome back, deep divers. Today we are heading to Spain to delve into their approach to AI regulation.
Spain, huh?
Sounds sunny.
Well, at least our topic is, we're going to be focusing on data protection specifically within the world of AI.
Yeah, that's a hot topic for sure, keeping AI in check and all that.
Absolutely. And our guide for this deep dive is, well, let me see if I can pronounce this correctly. It's from a Spanish law firm, MCHM Abogados.
Wow, that's a mouthful.
I know, right? But you know what? Their expertise shines through. They lay it all out. You know how Spain's data protection agency, the AEPD, is really trying to make sure AI development doesn't go off the rails.
So like preventing some kind of AI Wild West scenario.
Exactly. And, you know, it's interesting because instead of waiting for things to go wrong, they're trying to create a framework that encourages responsible AI from the get-go.
Makes sense. Prevention is better than cure, as they say.
Right. Now, for our listeners who might not be totally familiar, what exactly is the AEPD? So AEPD stands for Agencia Española de Protección de Datos, which translates to the Spanish Data Protection Agency.
Ah, okay. Got it. So they're the ones in charge of, what, making sure all the data protection laws are followed in Spain?
You got it.
Yeah.
They're like the watchdogs, you know, making sure that businesses and organizations are respecting everyone's data rights.
So they're kind of like the data police, making sure no one's stepping out of line.
Uh-huh. I guess you could say that. But it's more than just, you know, being the data police. It's about making sure companies don't get carried away with all the possibilities of AI and forget about the people, you know, the individuals whose data is actually being used.
Yeah, that makes sense. Striking that balance, right, between innovation and responsibility.
Exactly.
So how are they actually doing this with AI? Like, what are some of their main approaches or strategies?
Well, one of the big things they do is audits. They've developed these, like, super detailed guides for companies on how to audit their AI systems.
Okay, so it's like a test to see if your AI is playing by the rules?
Pretty much. And these audits, they're not just for show. They dig deep, you know, into all sorts of areas to make sure companies are using AI responsibly. Like, one thing they look at is responsibility itself. Like, who is ultimately responsible for the AI system and what it does? Is it the developer, the company using it, or someone else?
Ah, I see. With AI, it can be tricky sometimes to figure out exactly where the buck stops.
Right. Lots of moving parts.
What other areas do these audits focus on?
Let's see. Transparency is a big one. The AEPD really wants companies to be upfront about how their AI systems work, you know, what data they use, how they make decisions, all of that.
Yeah, transparency is key. It's like you don't want these AI systems operating in a black box where nobody knows what's going on inside.
Exactly. It's about accountability too,
Yeah.
right? Not just protecting data, but making sure things are fair.
For sure. And so is there like a check on whether using AI is even necessary in the first place? Like, do they look into that?
Oh, yeah, definitely. They call it proportionality. Making sure the use of AI is actually justified. You know, is it the right tool for the job, or are they just using it because it's the shiny new tech toy?
Gotcha. So it's not just about having AI, but about using it in the right way for the right reasons.
Right. It's about being strategic and ethical, not just trendy.
Makes total sense. Now, we've talked about responsibility and transparency, but what about the data itself? I'm curious, how does the AEPD make sure that the data being used is accurate and reliable?
Oh, that's a really good point, and it's where data quality comes in big time. The AEPD stresses that companies need to make absolutely sure that the data going into their AI systems is top-notch, you know, accurate, high-quality stuff.
So it's not just about having a lot of data, but about having the right data.
Precisely. And not only that, but also using only what's necessary. No need to collect a mountain of data when a smaller, focused set will do.
So it's about being smart and efficient with data, not just collecting it for the sake of collecting it.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, the AEPD wants companies to actually monitor their AI systems, you know, check their actions, make sure their results are legit, make sure everything is working as it should be.
It sounds like these audits are pretty thorough. Like they cover everything from the design of the AI system all the way to how it's actually being used day to day.
Yeah, you could say that it's a comprehensive approach for sure.
Spain is sending a clear message here. They're serious about responsible AI, and they're not messing around.
Absolutely. If you're going to use AI in Spain, you better do it right and with respect for people's data.
Got it. So we've got a good handle on the AEPD and their role. Now, I'm curious, how does all of this tie into GDPR, the EU's General Data Protection Regulation? I know it's all about protecting personal data, but how does it specifically relate to AI?
Oh, that's a great question. And that's where things get even more interesting. GDPR is like the foundation for everything data protection related in the EU. and that includes AI. It sets out the core principles for handling personal data, and the AEPD has issued specific guidance on how those principles apply to AI.
So GDPR is like the rule book, and the AEPD is the referee making sure everyone's playing by those rules when it comes to AI.
You got it. That's a perfect analogy.
So, what are some specific ways those GDPR principles apply to AI in Spain?
Well, for starters, think about the legal basis for using data. You can't just feed whatever data you want into your AI system.
Right, it's got to be above board.
Exactly. GDPR requires a very clear legal reason for using any personal data.
So companies can't just say, oh, we're using this data for our super cool AI. They actually have to justify it under GDPR.
Precisely. And it can't just be some general justification either. It has to be specific and directly related to what the AI system is doing.
And then there's transparency, right, which is a big one. People have a right to know how their data is being used, especially with AI getting more and more complex.
Absolutely. It's all about the right to information. People should understand how their data is being processed, especially by AI.
So no more hiding behind the AI is too complex to explain excuse.
Nope, not anymore. The AEPD is pushing for clear explanations, even if the AI itself is super complicated.
Now, this is where I think it gets really interesting. AI is being used more and more to make decisions that directly affect people, like loan applications or even job screenings. How does GDPR ensure fairness in these automated decisions?
Yeah, that's super important. GDPR actually says that people have a right to not be subject to a decision that's based solely on automated processing, especially if that decision has big consequences for them.
So it's not about banning automated decisions altogether. It's about making sure there's human oversight, right? Like a chance for people to say, hey, wait a minute, this isn't right.
Exactly. Individuals need to understand why a decision was made and have a way to appeal it if they think it was unfair.
That makes sense. And what about the amount of data being used? I imagine GDPR has something to say about that, too.
It does. Data minimization. It's a GDPR principle that says companies should only collect and use the data that's absolutely necessary, nothing more.
So no more data hoarding, just in case.
Nope. Got to be targeted and specific.
Makes sense. And the data has to be accurate, too, right?
Oh, definitely. Inaccurate data can really mess things up, lead to bad AI decisions with real consequences.
And I'm guessing there's also a focus on understanding the potential risks of using AI before something goes wrong. Like, what if an AI messes up or there are unintended consequences?
That's where DPIAs come in data protection impact assessments.
DPIAs, huh? Those sound intense.
They can be. GDPR requires DPIAs for any processing that could put individuals' rights at risk, and that definitely includes AI.
So it's like a risk assessment specifically for data protection.
Exactly. It forces companies to really think through what could go wrong and to put safeguards in place.
It's all starting to come together now. It's not just about setting rules and doing audits. It's about weaving data protection into the whole process of developing and using AI.
You got it. It's about being proactive, thinking ahead, and using tools like DPIAs to anticipate and manage any potential issues.
Wow, it's impressive. Spain seems to be taking a long-term view here, recognizing that AI is not going anywhere, so we better figure out how to use it responsibly.
Absolutely. And one of the most interesting things is their focus on privacy from design and privacy by default.
I've heard those terms before, but could you remind me what they actually mean in practice?
Sure. Privacy from design means that data protection needs to be built into every step of creating an AI system.
So it's not an afterthought like, oh, we should probably think about privacy now. It's built in from the beginning.
Yeah, exactly. Like baking privacy into the DNA of the AI.
Makes sense. And what about privacy by default? How does that work?
So privacy by default means that the AI system, right out of the box, should be set to the most privacy-friendly settings. Like, by default, it should only collect and use the bare minimum amount of data it needs to work.
So instead of collecting everything just in case, the AI starts off being very minimal with the data it uses.
Right. And if it needs more data, you should be very clear about that and get the users okay.
I like that, like setting it to privacy mode from the get-go.
It's a smart approach. And it's great to see the AEPD really pushing for these principles.
It sounds like they're trying to find that sweet spot, where innovation can thrive, but without sacrificing people's rights and data protection.
Absolutely. They get that AI has huge potential, but it needs to be done ethically and with respect for fundamental rights.
They're definitely setting a high bar. It's refreshing to see a regulatory approach that's so well thought out and forward-thinking.
I agree. They're not shying away from the tough questions, and they're taking real action to make sure AI is used for good, not just for profit.
So, To sum it all up, Spain is taking a very proactive and comprehensive approach to AI regulation, with a big focus on data protection through the AEPD.
Right. They're not just setting rules, they're tackling the challenges head on and making sure ethical considerations are baked into the way AI is developed.
Yeah, it's really refreshing to see, that kind of proactive approach instead of just reacting to problems after they happen.
Right. It's about realizing that AI, it's not some neutral thing. It can be used in so many ways, good or bad, so we need to be careful.
And they're basically saying innovation is great, but not if it means trampling on people's rights.
Exactly. And that's a message that needs to be heard, especially now with technology moving so fast.
So I want to leave our listeners with something to think about. With AI changing so rapidly, how do we keep these regulations up to date?
That is the question, isn't it? AI is constantly evolving, so regulations need to be flexible, adaptable.
What kind of challenges do you think we might see down the line? As AI gets even more sophisticated, what does that mean for all of us? For individuals, for businesses, for society?
It's a lot to wrap your head around. But one thing's for sure, we're just at the beginning of this conversation about AI regulation, and it's a conversation we all need to be a part of.
Absolutely. Well, that brings us to the end of our deep dive into AI regulation in Spain. Huge thanks to MCHM Abogados for giving us such a great overview of this complex topic.
And of course, thanks to all our listeners for joining us on this journey into the world of AI and data protection.
Be sure to check out the show notes for a link to the source material if you want to learn more. And until next time, keep diving deep and stay curious.